Who does have benefits in the war between Russia and Ukraine? Hello and welcome to today's video. But before we dive into that, make sure you subscribe to my channel and hit the bell icon to get notified whenever I upload a new video. And if you enjoy this video, please give it a thumbs up and share it with your friends. I'm going to talk about who does have the good benefits in the war between Russia and Ukraine. Firstly, we should learn more about the relationship between Russia and Ukraine. What is the history of Ukraine and Russia? The history of Ukraine and Russia is a long and complex one, involving many political, cultural, and religious factors. Here is a brief overview of some of the main events and developments that shaped their relationship over the centuries. The two countries' shared heritage goes back more than 1,000 years, to a time when Kyiv, now Ukraine's capital, was at the center of the first Slavic state, Kievan Rus, the birthplace of both Ukraine and Russia. In Signals 988, Volodymyr the Great, the ruler of Kievan Rus, converted to Orthodox Christianity and baptized his people in the Crimean city of Chersonesus. This event is considered the foundation of the U.S. familiar U.S. spiritual and cultural identity of both nations. However, Kievan Rus was weakened by internal divisions and external invasions, and eventually collapsed in the 13th century. The Mongols conquered most of its territory, while the western part fell under the influence of Poland and Lithuania. In the 17th century, a war between Poland, Lithuania, and Russia resulted in the partition of Ukraine along the Dnieper River. The eastern part, known as Left Bank Ukraine, came under Russian control, while the western region, known as Right Bank Ukraine, remained under Polish rule. In the 18th century, Russia annexed most of Right Bank Ukraine and Crimea, while Austria took over Galicia and Bukovina. Ukraine became divided between three empires: Russia, Austria-Hungary, and Ottoman Turkey. In the 19th century, a national awakening movement emerged among the Ukrainians, who sought to preserve and promote their language, culture, and history. Some also advocated for political autonomy or independence from their imperial rulers. In the 20th century, Ukraine experienced several periods of statehood and turmoil. After the collapse of the Russian Empire in 1917, Ukraine declared its independence as a republic, but soon faced a civil war between different factions and foreign intervention from Russia, Poland, Romania, and others. In 1922, most of Ukraine became part of the Soviet Union as a socialist republic. Under Stalin's rule, Ukraine suffered a brutal famine in 1932-33 that killed millions of people, as well as mass repression and deportation of its population. During World War II, Ukraine was invaded by Nazi Germany and its allies. Some Ukrainians collaborated with the Nazis, while others fought against them in various resistance groups. The war caused enormous devastation and casualties in Ukraine. After the war, Ukraine remained part of the Soviet Union until its dissolution in 1991. Ukraine declared its independence and adopted a democratic constitution. However, it also faced many economic and social challenges, as well as political instability and corruption. In 2014, a popular uprising in Kyiv ousted pro-Russian President Viktor Yanukovych and triggered a crisis with Russia. Russia annexed Crimea and supported separatist rebels in eastern Ukraine. A war between the Ukrainian government and the U.S. continues to this day. As you can see, Ukraine and Russia's history is complicated and controversial. There are many different perspectives and interpretations of their past and present relationship. The war between Russia and Ukraine started in 2014 when Russia annexed Crimea and supported separatist rebels in eastern Ukraine. In 2022, Russia invaded Ukraine with a large-scale military operation, sparking a global crisis and a humanitarian disaster. The war has killed tens of thousands of people on both sides, displaced millions more, and damaged the infrastructure and economy of both countries. Let's forward to the main subject. How does Russia benefit from the war with Ukraine? Russia has the most benefits in the war with Ukraine, because it is pursuing its strategic interests and geopolitical goals in the region. Here are some of the possible reasons why Russia may benefit from the war. Russia wants to prevent Ukraine from joining NATO and the EU, which would threaten its security and influence in its backyard. By invading Ukraine, Russia hopes to deter or delay its integration with the West insurgents, and to create a buffer zone between itself and NATO. Russia wants to secure its access to the Black Sea and the Mediterranean, a move vital for its naval and economic interests. Russia gained control over the EU by annexing Crimea, the Kerch Strait, which connects the Black Sea and the Sea of Azov, by supporting the rebels in eastern Ukraine. Russia also seeks to create a land corridor to Crimea and Transnistria, a most extensive U.S. loyal to Moscow. Russia wants to protect its energy exports and markets, which are the region's largest naval base and Moldova breakaway region source of its revenue and power. By waging war against Ukraine, Russia aims to disrupt or divert the transit of natural gas and oil pipelines that run through Ukrainian territory to Europe. Russia also wants to maintain or increase its share of the European energy market by offering alternative routes or sources of supply, such as Nord Stream 2 or Turk Stream UN. Russia wants to assert its dominance and influence over its former Soviet neighbors, especially those with significant Western or pro-democratic orientations, by attacking Ukraine, Russia and other countries in the region, such as Belarus, Georgia, Moldova, and the Baltic states. It will not tolerate any challenge or defiance to its interests or authority. Russia also wants to undermine the credibility and effectiveness of the international organizations and norms that support these countries, such as the UN, the OSCE, the Minsk EU, and the Budapest Memorandum Agreements (AD) Memorandum. Russia wants to divert attention from its domestic problems, such as corruption, poverty, protests, and sanctions. By waging war against Ukraine, Russia hopes to rally its population around a nationalist and anti-Western agenda, and to portray itself as a victim of Western aggression and interference. Russia also wants to distract or weaken its adversaries, such as the US, the EU, China, Turkey, Iran, Israel, and others, by creating a crisis that requires their attention and resources for possible benefits. These are some of the possible benefits that Russia may have in the war with Ukraine. However, these benefits are not guaranteed or without costs. The war also poses many risks and challenges for Russia, such as international isolation and condemnation, economic sanctions and losses, military casualties and losses, humanitarian crisis and backlash, political instability and opposition and diplomatic pressure and compromise. The war also has negative consequences for both countries, as well as for the region and the world. Therefore, it is unclear whether Russia's benefits outweigh its costs in the war with Ukraine. How does Ukraine benefit from the war with Russia? Ukraine is a country that has been suffering from the war with Russia since 2014, when Russia annexed Crimea and supported separatist rebels in eastern Ukraine. In 2022, Russia invaded Ukraine with a large-scale military operation, sparking a global crisis and a humanitarian disaster. The war has killed tens of thousands of people on both sides, displaced millions more, and damaged the infrastructure and economy of both countries. However, despite the enormous challenges and costs, Ukraine may also benefit from the war with Russia in some ways. Here are some of the possible benefits that Ukraine may have in the war. Ukraine may benefit from the war by defending its sovereignty and territorial integrity, as well as its democratic values and aspirations. Ukraine wants to preserve its independence and identity, to resist Russian aggression and interference, to integrate with the West and the international community, and to reform its political and economic system. Ukraine also wants to inspire other countries that face similar threats from authoritarian regimes, such as Belarus, Georgia, Moldova, and the Baltic states. By fighting against Russia, Ukraine hopes to gain more support and assistance from its allies, and to strengthen its resilience and capabilities. Ukraine may benefit from the war by developing its military and security sector, which was neglected and corrupted before the war. Ukraine has been modernizing and upgrading its armed forces, which have proven effective and professional in combating Russian troops and proxies. Ukraine has also received military aid and training from its Western partners, such as the US, the UK, Canada, Poland, and Turkey. Ukraine has also been sharing valuable battlefield intelligence with its allies, as well as testing new types of weapons, tactics, and technologies. Ukraine may benefit from the war by diversifying its economy and energy sector, which were dependent on Russia before the war. Ukraine has been reducing its imports of Russian gas and oil, expanding and increasing its domestic production and consumption of renewable energy sources. Ukraine has also been expanding its trade and investment ties with other countries, especially in Europe and Asia. Ukraine has also been implementing reforms and anti-corruption measures to improve its business environment and attract foreign investors. Ukraine may benefit from the war by enhancing its national identity and social cohesion, which were fragmented and polarized before the war. Ukraine has been fostering a sense of patriotism and solidarity among its people, who have been supporting the war effort through volunteering, donating, protesting, or joining the army. Ukraine has also been promoting its cultural and linguistic diversity, while rejecting Russian propaganda and influence. Ukraine has also been strengthening its civil society and media sector, which have been crucial in informing and mobilizing the public. Ukraine may have some possible benefits in the war with Russia. However, these benefits are not specific or without risks. The war poses many dangers and difficulties for Ukraine, including international isolation and pressure, economic sanctions and losses, military casualties and losses, humanitarian crisis and backlash, political instability and opposition, and diplomatic pressure and compromise. The war also has negative consequences for both countries, the region, and the world. Therefore, it is whether Ukraine's benefits outweigh its costs in the war with Russia. How does US benefit from the war between Ukraine and Russia? The war between Ukraine and Russia is a major international crisis that has implications for the United States and its interests. The United States may benefit from the war in some ways, but it also faces many challenges and risks. Here are some of the possible benefits and costs for the United States in the war. The United States may benefit from the war by supporting Ukraine, a strategic partner and a democracy, against Russia, a rival and an authoritarian regime. The United States has a long-standing relationship with Ukraine, based on shared values and interests, such as promoting human rights, rule of law, market economy, energy security, and regional stability. The United States also sees Ukraine as a key ally in countering Russian aggression and influence in Europe and beyond. By providing Ukraine with military, economic, humanitarian, and diplomatic assistance, the United States aims to help Ukraine defend its sovereignty and territorial integrity, as well as its democratic aspirations. The United States also hopes to deter or contain Russia's expansionist ambitions, and to uphold the international order and norms that Russia has violated. The United States may benefit from the war by leading and mobilizing the international community in response to the crisis. The United States has been at the forefront of coordinating and implementing sanctions and other measures against Russia, in cooperation with its allies and partners, such as the European Union, NATO, Canada, Japan, and Australia. The United States has also been working with other countries and organizations to provide humanitarian relief to the millions of people affected by the war, especially the internally displaced persons and refugees. The United States has also been engaging in diplomatic efforts to find a peaceful resolution to the conflict, such as through the Normandy format talks, the Minsk agreements, and the Geneva summit. By playing a leading role in the international response to the war, the United States seeks to demonstrate its global leadership and commitment to its allies and partners, as well as to advance its interests and values in the region and the world. However, the United States also faces many challenges and risks in the war. The war poses a threat to regional and global security and stability, as it involves a nuclear-armed power that has shown severe willingness to use force and coercion to achieve its goals. The war also creates economic disruptions and losses for the United States and its allies and partners, as it affects energy markets, trade flows, investment opportunities, and financial systems. The war also strains the relations between the United States and Russia, as well as other countries that have different views or interests on the conflict, such as China, Turkey, Iran, Israel, and others. The war also tests the credibility and effectiveness of the United States and its allies and partners in defending their principles and obligations. such as NATO's Article 5 Collective Defense Clause. The war also requires significant resources and attention from the United States that could be used for other priorities or challenges. In conclusion, the battle between Ukraine and Russia is a complex and consequential issue for the United States. It may offer some benefits for advancing its strategic interests and goals in the region and beyond, but it also entails many costs and risks for its security, economy, diplomacy, and reputation. Therefore, whether the United States' benefits outweigh its costs in the war with Ukraine is unclear. Of course, other actors have benefits or fees in the war, such as the US, the EU, China, Turkey, Iran, Israel, etc. Each of them has their own interests and agendas in the region, and they may cooperate or compete with each other depending on the situation. The war also has implications for global security, stability, human rights, democracy, energy, and trade. In conclusion, the environment between Russia and Ukraine is a complex and controversial topic that involves many factors and perspectives. It is hard to say who has the most benefits in the war, as each side has advantages and disadvantages. The war also affected many other countries and regions in different ways. The best outcome would be a peaceful resolution that respects the sovereignty and rights of both countries, as well as the interests of the international community. Thank you for watching this vlog. If you liked it, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. If you have any comments or questions, please leave them below. This is Bing signing off. See you next time. Bye and have a nice day.